Hey there guys, welcome back to another deck profile with yours truly, Paul Reisman. Today we are taking a look at my recent IU Olympians deck that I piloted at Locals. So, without further ado, let's jump right into things.
This session brought to you by Odyssey Games for pre-orders and sealed product, CCG Prime for tons of singles and supplies, Cardo Doko for international rulers looking for products, and FoulLibrary.com for articles and wonderful deck lists, as well as our guest lecturer members King Pearlshine, Vite Ramen, Mognite, and Darren Noblock. Class is in session.
Alright guys, let's jump into my IU profile for After Pilgrim Memories has landed. So first of all, here is IU, the Lunar Swordsman. I'm going to give you just a moment to pause and read all of her abilities, but basically the ones that are most important here are Imperishable, Enter, discard a Soul Resonator to buff herself, and once it'll actually, I'm going to just say it right now, all of these abilities are very good. The Judgment is really cheap, and she has decent stats and gets even better when you reincarnate her into the Liberated Shaman. So when she enters, you get Rabbit Wave from the deck and any number that you want. However, I just don't find anything other than this one card to be all that useful. In fact, most of the time, if you're going to be reincarnating, it's really just to give you a permanent stat buff of +5/+5 in that flying keyword as well, in addition to your imperishable keyword. So she does have her uses. She's not incredibly amazing. If you don't have this card, you could easily play the deck without it. The most important card that you need to have in the deck is Return of the Shaman. If you can't read sideways, here is Return of the Shaman, and here is the bolded text that you need to be looking at, because pause and read real quick. It's basically the Mount Olympus Arena expansion. So even though this card is legal, we do not have Zeus to make use of it, because Zeus is banned. So unfortunately, we don't have this card. But luckily, we do have Return of the Shaman, which is basically the exact same thing at the end of the day. The best part is, though, you can play it on both players' turns. It does not specify on your turn and only on your turn. So you get to do some really interesting things with all of the Olympians. So if you've missed Olympians, this is the way for you to go. But before we get too far into that, let's look at the souls that we're playing. So we're playing, obviously, IU the Liberated Shaman. She herself is not a soul, so just keep that in mind. Although when you do reincarnate her, you get to search your deck for a soul because of her J-Ruler side. I am playing one Rebellious Soul IU. This is really fun to take control of things like Neverend, which you're going to be seeing a lot again in your Grim decks. But also there was a moment in which I took Dalton's Mistletoe when I was playing against Odin, and then all of a sudden he ordered another Mistletoe and just wasn't able to use any of its effects. It also wasn't, he wasn't able to use any of the Replicant Odin effects that he wanted to use, because even though he destroyed all my stones, he couldn't banish things from his graveyard in order to neg my board and kill me. So at that point I had everything established to just take over and win the game, even though I didn't have stones. And the only way out was to neg my board in some fashion. So Rebellious Soul IU, you know, wouldn't you believe, actually has a lot of applications in today's metagame. Just taking a 1-drop Resonator has some interesting things you can do. So just putting that out there for you. Very good card. Plus she's a 1-drop 6/6 with Return of the Shaman, reducing her cost, so that's really helpful. I'm playing the Tiger for its Precision effect and the Samurai for its Pierce effect. Otherwise, I'm playing all of the other souls like Grieving Elf Spirit, Spirit Bug, Misty Dragon Spirit. All of those are going to be in the sideboard except for these two. These are the two symbol skills that I think are the most useful in the main board for game 1. And so and if you want to pivot and, you know, play more souls because your IU is pretty much uninhibited by your opponent's deck in games 2 and 3, go for it. But otherwise, I just play just a handful of souls in the main board alongside your Zeus Alice, who is a soul, so she can come in for a blue and white instead of for 3 will. A 2 cost 8/8 is certainly not bad in any way. And she's also a new 12 Olympians, in addition to all of the other races she has. So what's great is you get the first Olympian, and she's here. just kind of Zeus is inside of Alice, so it's kind of a weird thing of like, is Zeus really... Okay, well, okay. The first Olympian is here. Let's just put it that way. Of course, we're playing Poseidon, Apollon, all of the other 12 Olympian gods, all of them outside of Mount Olympus, and of course, Zeus, who is banned. We are also playing one Death Scythe to get rid of my opponent's Swiftness and Imperishable, which is really relevant right now. Bahamut is a deck. Abdul is seeing play right now. Other decks that like their J-Rulers having Swiftness, this card is actually coming out of the woodwork. This card was really impactful when it first came out in Alice Cluster, because it did so much against Grim Rulers who got Imperishable or Swiftness. So the fact that we're seeing a lot of those rulers back into the metagame makes this card even better than it was before. But in this deck in particular, and this is something that I picked up from m.ha, you can actually use Death Scythe to remove cards from your graveyard, like your 12 Olympians here, to put them in the RFGs to make sure that they are still giving you access to Union 7 when you eventually hit it. So she, Death Scythe is really, really good for that. In addition to that, we have Horn of the Sacred Beast. This is actually one of the tools that is most useful against IU in this situation, because this is one of the only ways of getting your opponent out of Union 7 themselves. And so being able to say, like, you don't get Union 7 is really powerful, and that's why we play Death Scythe. Otherwise, this is just a really useful thing. If your opponent has a graveyard effect-based deck, this is a really good way of disrupting those plays and making them cry for it. So Horn of the Sacred Beast is here. Plus it gives you a +2/+2 to your J-Ruler, which can sometimes be useful. Death Scythe has that same effect, but it's not necessarily something you depend upon. It's just kind of nice to have. So Horn of the Sacred Beast, really useful card in a lot of ways. And it has been ever since it got unbanned. We are playing another win condition in Electro Shooting Star of Fire. If you don't know why this card is good, just start playing it and you'll understand pretty quick. I needed a way to beat Dark Tree, and she's the way to do it in the most classic sense. She's also pretty easy to find because of IU's God's Art ability, so if you just need to end the game, she's here for that. I play one Ray Aznable. He's a really good way of making sure your opponent doesn't get enter effects, and for some reason 3 drops like Ray Aznable, you can play them relatively easily, and if you play it at the right time, your opponent just can't really deal with it. It also has Barrier, so that's even more relevant. It has that nice little inheritance ability where you can pay a blue and discard to stop an enter effect, which helps you play against other Electras, or just anything that is, potent against you in terms of enter effects. So he's really good in a lot of different scenarios and has been one of the best blue cards since he was printed. We also have Girion in here to negate stuff and blow up 1-drops. He's very helpful for that. All of the aforementioned cards as well work really well in combination with Hero Reincarnation, resonate with 4 costs or less from the graveyard into the field, with the exception of Girion. Oops. But in general, this card is just really helpful for getting back your Electra, any of your Olympians that is in the graveyard, including one of the more costly ones, Athena, or even as far back as Hades, if you need to just bring him back to blow up your opponent's stuff. He's really, really useful for that. Fortunately, doesn't grab Girion. I decided to read cards today, but Girion is still really useful in the sense that he's just got a lot of utility right now for negating and getting rid of stuff. If you do end up playing him in any fashion, some decks just fold to not being able to play 1-drops. So just keep that in mind. Girion, a very strong card still. Seeing a little bit of niche play right now, but has value overall. I'm not going to go too deep into it, but I am playing a Lorite, Fair Spell, and Kilowa's Fossil Girl in the City card. Really helpful alongside your Cascade of Water Solaricier. This is actually really solid in IU in the sense that if you do remove an Olympian from the top of your deck, you're accelerating into Union 7. Plus, this card is really good against stuff that's not resonators, but kind of operates like Fiola in that sense, where it spins it to the bottom of the deck as opposed to canceling it outright. So sometimes there are cards that just need to interact with the chase rather than the cards on the chase, and Cascade has been really good for that very reason. I'm also playing one Dispelling Stone. You really need Addition Hate right now. There's a lot of really strong additions. This has just been you know, real solid, good support for white ever since it was printed back, way back in Saga Cluster. Cantrips, blows something up, and recycles itself, which is really helpful. Look of Corruption is there to just get rid of my opponent's hand sometimes. This card can just hit some really amazing things. So this card is just very helpful, especially going late into the game. I'm playing one Witch of the Fallen Kingdom. There are not a lot of decks that do so much searching that this card is, you know, utterly broken in a sense. There were some formats where this card was utterly amazing, but especially against Grim decks right now, I would think the Witch of the Fallen Kingdom is very strong in that regard. Otherwise, she is being utilized for her ability to grab other copies of herself from the extra deck and eventually end up on your Pumpkin Witch for, you know, a nice flying swiftness terrain that just ends the game sometimes. So it's not really something I find myself going into very often, but you do have access to this witch package if you need it. And then we are playing GST, Girl Staring At, to blank things and draw cards. Very strong card right now. Very, very, very good overall. An amazing card. Blanks your opponent's field, gets around Barrier, Eternal, all of those fun things so you can blow up things or just prevent your opponent from getting enter effects as they put something on the chase. Very good card overall. Highly recommend. I am playing Essence of Athena's Power. This card is very solid right now for a lot of other reasons that I've explained in other videos. Being able to just mess with your opponent's RFG if you're playing against the Solaria deck, or mess with their graveyard if they're playing something else that relies on the graveyard. Playing this in addition to Horn to protect your own graveyard if they try and horn you. It's a very good card. So I'm playing it. I think it's wonderful. One of my favorite cards in black overall. I'm playing one Flute here as a way of ramping into an IU relatively easily with one stone. She has Barrier, so as far as I'm concerned, she's the best mana dork we have in the game at this stage. And plus, she can put +1/+1 counters on stuff if you really want to do that, but for the most part, you're using her for the mana production. I also use Sacred Burial for the same reason, recycling cards back into the deck that I want to see a little bit later on. Drawing a card and ramping a stone, really good way of making sure that IU has additional mana to work with. Borozuki, absolutely broken card. What a bomb late in the game. Look at the top 3 cards. Put one in your hand, one in the RFG, one in the graveyard. This card has gotten me to Union 7 in various situations just by being able to look at 3 cards. And then on top of that, she gets stats. You're not revving her, so you can't do any of the field neg shenanigans, but she's very good for being able to say, hey, I'm just going to set up even more stuff, and then I'll be a body on top of that. Flying Drain Bane on top of that, this card is absolutely fantastic. Probably my favorite Darkness card of all time. We're playing Dark Alice for draw support and for yeeting things into the graveyard and drawing cards. Really helpful for filling up your grave for Union 7 as well. One, Keep the Faith. Keep the Faith is really helpful because it can bring back things like your Flute. It can also bring back Hestias. It can bring back your Lorites. It can also bring back Witch of the Fallen Kingdom if it's in the graveyard for some reason, or if you have something like your Curse of Caduceus in the graveyard, which, you know, prevents your opponent from recovering entities outside of their recovery phase and preventing them from gaining life. It can be really helpful to have this. I'm mostly playing this card against things like Dark Tree because I can drain them for a little bit of life. But there are other niche applications for this card as well. Plus, it's an addition. In the event that I just want to have a Zeus Alice online, having a couple of additions and ways to get magic stones into the graveyard is really helpful for turning on her effects as well. So to some degree, this is there for that reason. I'm also playing Attack Order. Just ignore Genocider. You're never going to be flipping this guy. This is just a really good anti-Abdul card. Abdul eats this deck alive, and so I wanted just a straight out to it. This deck also has some issues playing around larger boards, so Flashing Smile's in here for the same reason. Also, IU's on the card, so you kind of have to run it, I think. I think that's the rule. I think that's actually in the CR. Liberation of the Waters is also a really helpful thing to make it so that your opponent's Abdul gets destroyed. It also is really helpful to have it in the graveyard. So if you use Return of the Shaman and discard this card, you can use it to supply Judgment to your IU in order to flip a little bit earlier. We talked about hero reincarnation a little bit. This is really good for getting back things like your Rayasdable, Electra, etc. Anything that's 4 cost or lower. Your Magic Stone deck is really consistent. Possession Stone, 5 colors. Moonshade, 5 colors. And then the 2 Wind Moon Fragments, which are way too interested in being played right off the top all of the time. So I can't play Electra on turn 4 on curve. Anyway, side deck is pretty standard. We do have bows and arrows because we are playing Electra. This is just a little bit of extra damage to deal to your opponent. Playing Exorcist Mage because I heard, Muse Staring At is a really good card, and this seems like a really good Muse Staring At, but on a stick. So I just thought I'd play this card. Alongside setting the stage for Providence, you could make an argument that this should be in the main board as well, but I put it in the side because I ran out of room to put it in the main board, so it's in the sideboard for right now. I'm also playing Replicant Shiva. This is a really helpful way of just also board clearing for my opponent, because this thing is absolutely fun and is a win condition unto herself if my opponent decides to overextend. And then 1 Rogue Spectator as just another way of saying you don't get to gain life this turn. If you try and play Illumia to try and gain back all the life that I slammed at you, that's just not going to happen. And so Rogue Spectator is really helpful for that. But guys, let me know what you think of Ayu, Shaman Swordsman. I love this deck. If you want to get better at Force of Will, honestly, Ayu is the deck to go for. It really makes you think about the combinations of cards and really teaches you to think about the entirety of your deck and what you're trying to do in the meantime. So if you want to get better at Force of Will, I think Ayu is the way. Persevere with this deck and it will give you dividends. But let me know what you guys think about this deck down in the comment section down below. While you're down there, hit that bell, hit subscribe, and hit the like button so we know that you like this video. And if you have a comment for us about whether or not you want to see other sort of reprint rulers for other clusters, let us know what that is down in the comment section down below. I know I'm definitely looking at Alice Cluster and just saying, man, there would be some really cool rulers if they were ever to come back in some reincarnated form. I'd be very excited. But anyway, guys, this has been Paul. Hope you've enjoyed the deck profile. And until next time, this has been Paul. Class is dismissed.